it's so wild to think about that history, and here we are years later, and finally, this game got to get remade. The other game I'd like to see brought back is Breath of Fire 1. There's some weird licensing hoops and issues with who owns what for that game, and so that's why you never see Breath of Fire 1 remade, but I'd love to see that one make a return as well. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the Grand Blue stuff? Because I think we can easily transition into our next subject.
Well, I was just gonna add that, like, Mario RPG is just one of these games that Nintendo's putting out. Like, we're getting Paper Mario Thousand Year Door this year. Mm-hmm. We're getting Mario versus Donkey Kong like next month, I think. Like, I feel like we're about to have like a banger Nintendo year, and like it for some reason, Brian, I don't know why, but it's like very quiet. Like, it's very like mild buzz.
Well, we had the Xbox showcase, Showtime, the PlayStation. We haven't had a Nintendo one yet.
Yeah, but we know these games are coming, and they're like all coming in the first half of the year. Like, there's first party Princess
What could be
Peach,
coming in
Donkey
the second
Kong.
half of this year? What could it be? Anybody have a guess? I have one.
2 ideas.
You got 2 ideas? I have a super idea.
Okay.
I'm rooting for Super Nintendo.
Do you have an LCD idea?
It's probably gonna be LCD because they're gonna wait and release an OLED.
Well, yeah.
Because
how it's gonna go is that it's gonna be LCD this year, OLED next year, Mini the year after, Mini OLED the year after that.
The fact you think an OLED is coming 1 year after launch is very generous to Nintendo.
That's generous to Nintendo.
Yeah, that's true.
I would think 4 to 5 years for that OLED.
No, because they want to have because it's not gonna be 4 to 5 years, because there's gonna be like 4 to 5 different versions with the OLED and LCD,
and then the color versions, and I hope they do come out with a light version, because that's something that I think is really I like how that works with the Switch, especially with the kids, because it's so much more durable.
I like it, but I also find it strange. I find the idea okay, not the light idea itself, the idea it's smaller. It's just the fact that it's called the Switch, but the Switch Lite doesn't actually switch because it doesn't have TV out.
The Switch is still a handheld, and one version of it supports TV out. And that's it is a handheld system, and I think that's where Nintendo is really playing to their strengths.
But that's the whole name of the system, Switch. Yeah. To switch between handheld to
the Switch was more a sleight of hand to think you bought a console.
But then you remove that feature with the Lite version.
Yeah, Nintendo.
That's why it's like I like the idea of the Lite. Don't get me wrong. I think a cheaper version that allows people to play without having, and it's smaller, so people with small hands like me will probably find it easier as well. But it just confuses me calling it the Switch Lite, but then have no Switch features that it had. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, so let's transition over into our next discussion topic, Final Fantasy VI. And the reason I want to bring this up, because on the internet this last week, there was a lot of discussion about the games director came out and said that if we were going to remake Final Fantasy VI, it would take 20 years to develop this game. And this is in the same kind of what we're seeing with Final Fantasy VII. It took them a long time from announcement to get Remake finally to come out. Here we are 2 years after the release of Remake, and Rebirth is getting ready to step into into play. And so they're basically chaptering the remakes off into how they had them with discs. And so I would suspect that there'll be another Final Fantasy VII R game at some point here 2 years from now, thus completing the trilogy. And that assumes that they don't want to do any of the additional content that they want. But 20 years for Final Fantasy VI, I think, is just an interesting kind of point of discussion. I'd love to get y'all's feedback, because for me, I continue to say Final Fantasy VI was I think one of the best Final Fantasies of its time.
A lot of people think it is the best, yeah.
And when it's all said and done, I know there's a lot of love and nostalgia for Final Fantasy VII, and not that Final Fantasy VII didn't deserve to be remade. I think that was the smart choice. But Final Fantasy VI would be, I think, a massive contender. But they have a huge cast of characters. They're telling an insane story. This is one of the games that really defined my childhood.